Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episodes, and today from Malaysia, everybody Eid Mubarak. It's Idul Azha, but we are in lockdown. We are trying to managing all of the law, rules, and regulations. Because of COVID, many people died in Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam. Even in South Asia, situation is not good. But we have to save our community. So that's why this year Malaysia arranged their Idul Adha and everything in many controlling environment. Actually, it's a completely controlling environment. So thank you everyone for joining today's sessions. So I want to start from Professor David. Uh, how do you want to analyze digital workplace? I think many organizations they have to go digital right now, and how they can manage these things, and especially if you have some sort of technological analysis you can share with our audience.
Well, to me, the digital workplace has multiple elements into it. And one of the first elements is that the digital workforce has accelerated us looking at where shortages are. It has accelerated us understanding the changing demographics of how you have to prepare, how you have to educate. In fact, if you don't mind, I'm going to use a couple of slides to
Yes,
cover
yes,
a
sure.
couple of the points on this. Let me go.
Yes, here is a share
So,
option.
so if you think about really where we are today and what's going on, and it's not letting me advance. If you think about 10 years ago, social networks are just beginning. We didn't have the web 10 years before that. And if you worked in web programming, online marketing, or mobile phone industries, they weren't there. So for many people listening to this, the jobs they have today did not exist 20 years ago. Now I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. And you look at places, this is a slide looking at the United States, but the labor that's needed is outpacing the labor that is available by quite a bit. Female in the workplace in the different regions, you can see East Asia and Pacific as actually one of the leaders up in females in the workforce. Uh, but what is real interesting is this slide is that the growth in the working age population has really screeched to a dramatic halt. And so there's not going to be as many people in the traditional working ages as we've had in the past. And so this is forcing us to change the dynamics of how we're going to bring people into the workforce. And you see them going. You see very different patterns by age of people in the workforce. This slide really surprised me that the percentage of growth of the people in the workforce in the US, the largest growth is in 55 to 65. And we're seeing that globally as too. So we're seeing an aging workforce. And you see it for many different areas. So if I look back globally, though, in the year 2000, it was a fairly young world. You know, this is population of 60 plus. And you can see a lot of the world was really under 5% or the 5 to the 12%, particularly throughout the Asian area. And that is really changing, as you see on this slide, dramatic shifts of the rapidly aging workforce in there. And we're seeing those going. So I'm going to stop at this one. Just so you know, this was a presentation that I did, I think it was year before last at Stanford. I was the keynote speaker on their Future Work Conference. And if you look at those changes, it's telling me that our digital workforce, our digital office has to be one that can work across all the generations. Many of the people in the earlier work from home, the telework area, typically were the younger folks in the company, and the older folks were the ones that went to the office every day because that's part of their almost DNA growing up. but COVID has forced that to be 100% remote in many instances. And so it has changed. We've seen Zoom and other virtual teleconferencing applications go, but they do a poor job of actually representing the type of work that we used to do in an office. And we're now seeing more enhanced versions, particularly using 3D avatars, using multiple rooms, making it easy to have one-on-one discussions, to have small group discussions, to bring project management into a virtual office environment. And that, I think, is going to become more and more the norm. Uh, we also saw initially during COVID remote work, way too many conferences held online. We were in meetings so much we couldn't do real work. And we're going to see that go away as we begin to use more virtual assistants to do things, more virtual check-ins. And this whole approach to bringing a virtual assistant to you as you're working remotely in the digital world is going to dramatically accelerate. And we're seeing many more of those. Some of the incubators that I am mentors at, well, every one of the accelerators I'm a mentor at, both in the United States and internationally, they all have some type of virtual assistant company in them trying to bring those to market. So the early precursor indications of growth in the market for that type of application is very strong. The other digital workplace thing that's surprising to many is we're seeing a dramatic growth of no code programming, where you can kind of describe what you want it to do and it will write the programs to do that for you. So these are trying to take advantage of the fact that large development teams are hard to get together. I mean, in the past, a large percent of the development team tended to work remote anyways. If it was not truly remote, they tended to want to work overnight while management wanted to work during the day. And so you saw parts of that coming, but it's being accelerated with this. And this is very similar to the movement back when Lotus 123 and VisiCalc were introduced, to where you took the power away from people who were the accountants of the ages and like that before. And we saw where everybody can do that. We're going to see that movement more, and even writing programs and things to solve business purposes. The other big thing about it is this digital workforce is rippling effects in others. I can tell you here in Austin, when you look at the new houses being built, almost all the new houses are now featuring work from home offices, where I think that's going to be a trend globally. You're going to see a place where you set aside areas for work from home, because working from the kitchen table with kids just doesn't work for many of these individuals. So those are some of the high level global changes. We can get more into the cybersecurity parts. We can get more into the tools they're using and things like that. But as a quick introduction, I think that begins to put on the table some of the issues. And the one that really I think is going to be the hardest as we move forward in this digital world is the fact that with the 5 generations we have in the workforce, the fastest growing one coming back to the workforce is the people who are plus 60 years old. There's talk in many nations around the world of extending the retirement age to 70, 75, to recognize that and to actually bring workers back in to do the work, because of the fact that the growth of working age individuals is decreased. So, Sharif, I think that's a good high level.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Donald. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, well, David covered things very well. I think of it, just want to remind people that digital work can be a lot of different things. So there's no code programming, which has been holy grail since I started in the business back in the late 70s. And I've been told, I remember in the 80s, there was a lot of people saying, what are you going to do when you're going to be out of work? Because, there's going to be programs that are going to write the programs for you. And I said, well, somebody has to write the programs that write the programs. And so there's always going to be work for me. And what's, winding up happening is we push the edge, the ability to write the no-code programming lags what we're actually doing. So for instance, there won't be quantum no-code programming for a little while anyway. Probably will be someday. Usually what the no-code programming is great for is workflow things. So it's, for instance, databases used to have to be programmed by somebody. In fact, I worked on that once so when you made the screens for the people to type in the stuff, a programmer actually had to do that. And I was on a job once where we did that in Fortran. But now you just drag and drop the forms onto the screen, and it's just gotten so incredibly easy to do that pretty much anyone can do that. A drawback of that, interestingly enough, is that what winds up happening is you get people who actually don't know anything about computers. And over the time I've been involved in computers, computer literacy has declined and not increased. And I had dinner once with Doug Engelbart, who was actually credited with creating the graphical user interface and the mouse. In fact, he told me he had the original mouse in his garage. It was a toilet paper tube cut in half, wrapped with wire. And Doug told me that his goal when he was creating the graphical user interface was to be able to enhance human intelligence. And he was disgusted about how graphical user interfaces wound up because they did the opposite. They turned computers into something that were akin to microwave ovens or something where you just had this small set of stuff that you could do, and people weren't able to create new stuff. So that's just an interesting interesting story that you wouldn't get from everybody. I was lucky enough to be there at the time. But one of the things that that's fun about digital stuff is that, like, I know people who moved to Thailand, and because of the internet, I mean, the internet is the kind of core to what allows us to do digital work. And but I'll say that there's a lot of other digital work that, like, for instance, learning to use Photoshop is not that easy. Photoshop, I mean, I use Photoshop, but I use this tiny subset of what Photoshop can do. I mean, it's insane if you really start to know how to use masks and layers and everything like that very effectively. It takes years to get really good at it. And so when you start looking across the board, then there's digital stuff that's affected all part of our life. When I first started using basically online printing, I actually wrote my bachelor's degree thesis using VI and TROF, which were programs you had to write little codes inside the text saying, start a paragraph here, highlight this one in italics and stuff like that. And there weren't that many people that were crazy enough to figure that out. And then later I started using tech. I have a check from Don Canute because I found a bug in it. And that was another one that was even more complicated, but you can make, people still use it in Europe. In fact, when I'm doing peer review, sometimes they'll submit it to me in tech. And so I have a tech and law tech programs to read it on my computer. So anyway, digital has a large span of what it is and what you can do. And I just was looking at a site where I can sign up and I can do ghost writing. And you can make quite a bit of money doing that, writing ad copy and doing things like that. You get these little temporary jobs doing a short writing project. And there's a lot of people, I haven't seen it, but I have friends who say that in Mexico, there's almost towns of people that are just expats from the United States who just bailed and went there because it's dirt cheap to live there, and they can do remote. It's really very digital. I mean, what they're doing is everything they're doing is using digital tools. So they're using digital editors, Word. They're using graphics, Photoshop, all the different kinds of things that you can get. If they want the resources, they get them from online. But when it comes to work, I just looked it up, and I think it's worthwhile to remember that there are significantly more people doing what we call blue collar work, than there are people doing the kind of work where digital is available. And as we expand and we start looking at the whole world, and even the United States, there's areas in the world in the United States that don't have internet connections. And so they're very, I was actually working on a project trying to get laptops to Syria, or sorry, for Syrians, but they were actually in Amman and in Beirut. So they basically, whole schools don't have a single laptop. And around the United States, we have a huge number of people that are like the people that are laying the tile in my house right now, that are jobs that can't be done that way. So the workplace itself in general requires thinking about both digital, and part of digital is the relationship of digital to the actual workforce itself. It's a portion of it, and it's an interesting topic, which we'll get to.
Thank you. We have our honorable guest, Professor Kimberly from IBM Television, International Broadcast Media. She is president for International Broadcast Media, and they are doing excellent work with lot of the podcast shows. I think they are running 60 to 70 shows in a every week. And this is an excellent show, and I think we can learn many things from their televisions. But as a think tank, World Talent Economy Forum, we are growing. We have some improvement, especially we yesterday we shared that we already started our undergraduate, masters, and PhD program with the collaboration with Paris graduate schools. Already we are getting students, and all of our discussions, ultimately the students, they are utilizing as a case study for their educational purpose, especially undergraduate, masters, and PhD program. Beside that, many developing nations, they already started to utilizing all of our 326 episode for their development purpose. Even let's say, I just want to share one things, because these students, they are improving, and we are providing scholarships, lot more support to the youth community, especially developing nations. Even we are creating job opportunities. Let's say what we are discussing, these youth communities, they are learning every day, and it's 100% free. We are not charging anything for the youth development with OGBA Foundation. So beside that, many foundation education institution from Asia Pacific, they're already joining with World Talent Economy Forums, this educational development initiative. And our speaker, those who want to join with our initiative, they can join. So thank you for all of your support, because without your support, we cannot fulfill all of the things. And this is the things we need to change human life, and where we can give them proper job, like proper education, proper placement. I think our government also feels some sort of like support they are getting from around the world. Professor Kimberly, are you available with us? Professor Kim? Okay, Professor Ram. Yes.
Sorry
Oh,
about that. I had a little glitch.
okay. Yes, yes,
Congratulations, Sharif, on what you have
yes,
done since I met you. I mean, you started this over a year ago, right? And look
yes,
where you
yes.
are
Yeah,
today. You're actually teaching classes. Um,
yes.
that is just amazing. And you know, I sit on the board of advisors for North Carolina State University's computer science department. I just became vice chair 2 years ago. So education is very important to me and what we do every day. But I want to share a little something with you. Back in 1984, when I graduated from college, I entered as a career into the world of telecom, where we were converting from step switching, analog, and to digital. Right. So that world was converting big in the telecom industry back in 1984, where I actually physically got to cut over the first digital multiplex switches. And it was very educational to me, and spellbinding to what we could do at that point in the industry. And then a few years later, I became one of the lead engineers for asynchronous transfer mode, which is now known or utilized as broadband. I also worked on the first ISDN networks up in Minnesota, where we converted them to be used where people could work from home, right? And asynchronous transfer mode, which is broadband or high band networks, we converted here in the Research Triangle Park for the first time back in 1992 or 3. And we had a network called the MCNC, North Carolina Information Network Highway. And we combined several of the hospitals in this area. You know, we have Duke, University of Chapel Hill, some really great research medical. And so that was converted over for medical, so that we could transfer, and we literally transferred the first MRI image back in 1993, and also education. It was all done in the name of medicine and education, definitely not anything else, gaming or anything else. And one of the things that surprised me was the government came forward and they said, you know what, this is all great and wonderful, but we just really don't want to be the first in this kind of technology. It's just very expensive to invest in. And here we were changing lives. We were helping students who were from lower income families and struggling in school. We were taking these students who were generally, unfortunately, you know, C and below average in the grading system, and they upped their averages to A and B's just because we put them on digital classes, video classes. So it was surprising to me to hear our government say, we really don't want to invest in this right now. So what truly paid for, and a lot of people don't know this, for our digital age, for the high bandwidth that we're utilizing so that we can now use it for education. Do you know what that was, Sharif?
Which one? Okay.
Do you know what really paid for the high bandwidth?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Two things.
Okay.
Two
Yes.
things. And maybe I shouldn't mention this on TV, especially this kind of class, but gaming and porn. Sorry, guys, but that was the two things that literally paid for the high bandwidth that we use today. That's real. It's fact supported. But hey, we have it, right? And here we are in this digital age where we can do so much from just our homes like we're doing today, streaming videos from all over the world. So it's been a great honor to be part of that expansion and growth over the years. And it's been more interesting and learning experience to me on how we use it, right? I built the backbone. I was part of converting over the backbones. But what has been just true spellbinding to me is how the people have learned to use it. Like, hi, Jim, chess, right? Playing chess in real time or teaching chess in real time, or just all of the other great, wonderful things that we use it for. Like this week, I learned about a dear friend of mine. Her daughter has leukemia, and she wants to play video games with people. She has these treatments that are very hard on her. So we're connecting her to people all over the world, hopefully, to play these video games. But what a great, wonderful thing that we're doing here with this education and the World Talent Economic Forum school is connecting people worldwide, but how we use this digital and how we use the information. But what I do want to tell people is when we invented all of this and when we created it to be used, it was intended to be used to improve our quality of life. Okay, not to replace people's jobs. Artificial intelligence, as it kept growing, it's all intended to improve quality of life. And we need to remember this. But all too often we get the bean counters of the world who come in and go, oh, let's just get rid of all of, these jobs so that we can put more money in certain people's pockets. And we need to stop doing that. White collar work jobs do exist. More of them can exist. We just need to start utilizing the technology to do that and stop listening. Sorry if there's any of you bean counters. I don't like them. Sorry. I'm an engineer by trade. I groomed myself in the financial industry. I'm not too crazy about what they call financial engineers. So I want to tell people, utilize this to improve quality of life. Okay. That's what it was intended for. Let's really push for that. Let's stop saying we're replacing jobs. Let's start saying we're here to improve the quality of life. That's why we did this. And it should do that. Also, I want to state in all fairness, the information we feed into any of this, all of this is still built by man. So we make mistakes. Okay. So just be careful. I've seen big mistakes in accounting programs, huge mistake, because it's all programmed by humans. Okay. All the data we feed into these systems, it's fed in by humans. So there's going to be mistakes. Don't think that this is fail safe. It's not. There's going to be a lot of failures in this. So use your mind. Artificial intelligence was not meant to replace our mind. Again, it was meant to give us quality of life, make our jobs easier, faster, but not replace the mind. Open your eyes, open your ears, learn, take some classes. I'm taking classes now. I'm going and studying all new things to just keep my mind sharp. And that's what we need to do, because again, artificial intelligence is created by man. The data we feed it, created by man. It will have mistakes, okay? And some of them really big. So let's don't rely on it 100%. Let's rely on us, right? Let's rely on these two things. I spoke about this at North Carolina State University's graduation 2 years ago. This is the most important thing we have, okay? And what we do is we pretend like the phones and the computers are. And we just need to be using those to make our jobs easier. So I agree with what has been talked about before this, that, it's here and we use it. And when he mentioned Fortran, I remember that. I remember programming punch cards back before I graduated. Okay. Yeah. I'm telling on myself, Jim. I remember programming punch cards and feeding them, and look where we are today. The computer programs for us, right? So, but I didn't mean to take up so much time. I get excited about all of this digital age, where we're at, but I'm more excited about learning how we're going to use it, because there's just the door's open. Let's use it for good. There's so many people out there using it for bad, but we need to implement and use it for good. But I think it's funny that Donald had mentioned Fortran. I remember all of that. I remember converting to Unix and teaching myself Unix, right? There was no teachers for Unix. Teaching myself, I beta tested Cisco's first products. Okay, there was no such thing as certification. We were certified and we did certify. Now I have to be certified to use it. I'm like, wait a minute. So think about these things, right? Where we started and where we are today. And it's just profound. But where we're going to be tomorrow. I mean, I've learned that, we've got autonomous driving cars. Yeah, we all know that. But they actually have them flying now. Automobiles that are flying. No, I'm not going to test drive them. I'm leaving that. But, in all fairness, in our science fiction, right, we've created everything that was written. Almost everything that was written, we are starting to live today. And I think it's just cool that we're doing this. And I hope that we continue to use it for more good. And it bothers me that our government hasn't progressed to use it for all the things we can. Like we're crying about voter fraud. Well, we've got artificial intelligence that can remove all of this, conceptions that are happening. I think our own government needs to start using what we have. But again, there's so much. When we developed broadband, when we first cut over all of that, it is open. It is wide open to the things that we can do. And we haven't touched it. We haven't even touched that tip of the iceberg yet. So I'm excited. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about it.
Thank you.
It's wonderful stuff.
Thank you. That's why World Talent Economy Forum, as a think tank, we invite great scholars like you, Professor David, Professor Rob, Professor Donalds, Mr. James Eid, even many famous scholars, even from the local community, International Islamic University, deputy rectors, National University Singapore is the most advanced university. They are famous scholars.
Yes.
Everybody join actually World Talent Economy Forum Board of Advisors. Your experience is very important for us because when we engage with the local communities, your experience, your guidelines is very important. But one thing, like I can remember in 2015 when I arranged a conference in Bangladesh with University of Cambridge. I bring few professors there. So when we develop some case studies and other things, that was our suggestions for developing nation. Do not jump on flying cars or this kind of things. Better you have a rickshaw, how to create better rickshaw, how to create better transportation systems. So this is the way, step by step, because yes, step by step we have to improve. And for this reason, we need very exclusive scholar like you. So we already invite all of you in our board. Hopefully our journey and everything will be very interesting. Professor Rob, you have all of your experience from IBMs and Microsoft and many big corporations. And as a business analyst, you are actually helping World Talent Economy Forum from day one. So what the analysis you want to add today?
Well, back on the topic of digital workplace.
Yes.
The pandemic has done some interesting things here. Before the pandemic, we were on track to implement virtual work at home programs aggressively before the end of the decade. Progress was slow, advancements were slow. Generally, the result was disappointing, but we were making progress year over year. Pandemic hit, and suddenly everything went into overdrive. We have made more progress in this space in the last year and a half than most of us thought was going to be capable of happening this decade. So that the speed of implementation of technology is sped up dramatically thanks to the pandemic. It's, I guess the old saying is every cloud has a silver lining. That perhaps was this one. I'm going to disagree with Kim a little bit in terms of the focus of automation. It really depends on who's driving the automation effort, whether the focus is to increase employee viability and work-life balance as opposed to just get the most out of employees. And the reason I point that out is one of the downsides to the pandemic is the loss of work-life balance. A lot of people found themselves working much longer, finding it much harder to separate the workday from their personal life. Stress went up. Reports of depression went up. Suicidal tendencies went up. Suicide numbers not as dramatic as the metrics would have indicated, but we've had uptick on that as well, indicating we're a little bit out of step in terms of making sure the employees' application of technology wasn't destroying them long term. In fact, one of the other side effects of this is the amount of churn we're watching in the environment is almost unprecedented. The number of people that just quit their jobs and moved to other jobs or done other things is unprecedented, at least in my lifetime. A tremendous amount of movement right now. In fact, one of the things that the industry isn't talking about as much as perhaps we should is just the number of resumes that are out there. The companies don't know about how many employees are looking at leaving that have not yet left. It's going to have a fairly significant impact on companies that are forcing their employees to come back to work, which appears to be the driver for a lot of these people leaving. Another driver, of course, is low wages. They become aware of the fact that they're underpaid, and there are a lot of higher paying jobs that are now open. And so people have become mobile. At one of the coverages here, we had a Burger King where every single member of the staff just walked off and put up a sign, "Sorry, we're not open," because everybody quit. And that's not the only store. As we look at the overall impact of digital workplace, I'll break it down into a couple areas. One is automation. Automation takes two forms. If you look at what's happening in warehouses and factories, it's full automation, which means worker replacement in many cases. This was largely driven by the fact that during the pandemic, these people still needed to come into work, but they couldn't come into work, so the lines went down. And so what's now driving a lot of the automation is this idea we've got to keep the lines up and the plants running, because you don't make money if you're not making products. Then on the other hand, we have the application of artificial intelligence, which is largely being implemented to enhance workers, at least in this round. I would argue that IBM is probably the leader in the focus on using AI as an enhancement tool as opposed to a replacement tool, but it is pretty consistent all the way across. Improvements in language translation, improvements in providing data so that you make decisions on data, informed decisions on data, and the AI provides recommendations of the decisions you should make. That's spreading, and that's a worker enhancement tool. And then the other area that we're seeing the automation, at least with regard to data tracking, is in products like WebEx. Cisco kind of stands out here in terms of instrumenting employees in a way where it's not invasive. So their managers aren't getting the results, but the employees themselves are getting the results, telling them how they're performing against their peers. And the managers are getting notified if the employees are somehow dropping out of the activity, where they might have a personal problem, an emotional problem, or something that needs to be dealt with by management. But it's less about their performance level and more about their underlying behavior to identify a personal defect, a personal problem, a level of stress that may not have been picked up, so it can be addressed before the employee goes off the deep end. All important. The movement to hybrid work, the idea of being able to go to work or go home. One of the breakthrough announcements Microsoft at the time was Windows 365. The point about this is it's a cloud hosted implementation, something we've been waiting for ever since Satya Nadella took over the company. But the big thing is it retains state. So you can access your work from any web connected device. It retains state, so you can move from device to device and not lose your work. And so it always exists. It's always there for you, regardless of the tool you're using to get to it. Then the other step is, of course, as we move to this digital workplace, is a concept. It's called the work multiverse, or NVIDIA calls it omniverse. But the idea of creating a digital twin of the world, and then using that digital twin to do experimentation on, do simulation. Before you actually implement a change in the physical world, you can implement that change in the virtual world, and that reduces your cost. And then you can model out the impact and maybe contain some of the consequential impacts of whatever it is you're doing. Limit collateral damage, if you would. That's pretty big right now. This idea of digitizing the planet and allowing us to work on the digitized model as opposed to the real model. And of course, this dovetails in with smart buildings and smart cities. The idea that when you go into your office building, you badge in, you are directed to a hoteling workspace. I was talking to one of the people I work with over at Qualcomm. They've got rotational cubicles and rotational offices. So you come in, you don't really have a cubicle that's yours. You are assigned a cubicle or office based on your level in the company and based on your need. Apparently over there, the offices have been back ordered or reserved up through the end of the year, which is kind of funny. People figured this all out and started putting their reservations. They're only supposed to be able to reserve them for maximum 2 weeks. And apparently some people have reserved these things for 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. So they have a corner office with a window because they figured out how to game the system. I imagine that'll get fixed. But these digital workplaces are optimized to reduce power use, keep energy use to the minimum, and make sure that the employees are properly provisioned, but not in a permanent home, but in a temporary home. So they walk in, the lights, the heat, their personal desktop are already automatically provisioned so they can get right to work. Then one of the futures that's driving through is this idea of being able to work for different employers. Right now, it's really frowned upon, but one of the other things we don't talk about as much as we should is the number of workers that are working 2 jobs where they were really only supposed to be working 1. So they've got 2 virtual jobs. They're making salary at both jobs. As long as they're productive, see, my personal view, as long as their productivity is high and you don't have an intellectual property problem, that shouldn't be an issue. It's up to the worker whether or not they can handle it or not. But they do have to be monitored because you could certainly work yourself to death during this. And there are intellectual property problems you have to worry about. The security comes into play if the person's working for 2 companies that are competing. The chance that intellectual property will pass from one company to another is pretty high since you've got the same worker working on both. And that could compromise product development. It could compromise a number of things within the company. So that does have to be monitored and monitored carefully. But I'm of the view if the employee can do it and it doesn't create a problem with regard to intellectual property, it might be wise to allow it, because we still have the issue with a lot of people being underpaid and having to address whether it's education loans or whatever and pay them off. And as I say, when you're young, you can do it. When you're old, perhaps not. And it might be a way to work for people to work their way out of the hole that they've dug yourselves into. It is going to require, this new digital workplace is going to require some skills. Baseline STEM, you do need to understand how a lot of this stuff works. If you're going to focus, Boolean logic is important because you're going to be interfacing with computers. You need to know how to search for stuff, how to find it. You need to understand the search tools because you're going to be looking for data increasingly, and whether or not you access that data real time or not, and the skills associated with that will have a lot to do with how you advance in your career. Other skills, I don't think we're going to get away from typing anytime soon, but we are moving to voice interfaces reasonably aggressively. So perhaps picking up the pace in terms of being able to talk briefly and get your thoughts in order very succinctly, because computers have no imagination, and the more succinct you are, the better off they'll understand. Better they will understand what it is you want them to do. And you'll be able to carry through, at least as we move to either voice or text. The folks I kind of admire greatly are the ones that can be very brief and succinct, particularly in the written word. So you're not getting a 4-pager in terms of 3 lines. Steve Ballmer at Microsoft taught me that particular skill. How to do in 3 words what other people do in 3 paragraphs is an excellent skill to have. So, and then finally, the thing that's being left out in terms of education are those work-life balance skills. We were talking in a group over the weekend about home economics being a much higher requirement now than perhaps it's been in the last couple of decades, because a lot of us are working from home. You need to be able to manage your home finances. You need to be able to manage your personal finances. You need to be able to plan for retirement. And a lot of that stuff is not happening timely for a whole bunch of us. And there's a big concern that when the following generations retire, they're not going to have any money to pay for their retirement if they don't start planning now. But they also need to know how to do other things. If you're going to be living, working, and everything from home, you need to be able to manage that life. And we're really not teaching kids those skills so that they can have, one, so they can understand what a happy, balanced life is, and number 2, how to achieve it. Too much focus on monetary wealth and the acquisition of things, and not enough focus on work-life balance and making sure that you're that when you're done with your life, you look back and you're proud of what you've accomplished. That's it.
Thank you, Professor Rob, for your excellent analysis. Mr. Jamsit, how do you want to add to this topic? Thank you.
Well, can I hear an amen? Thank you.
Yes.
Sharif, you're doing a terrific job of assembling talent and talking about very important issues. David, I wanted to just thank you for the setting us up very well, batting lead off. And, what you talked about is the plus 60s and this level and the mind, young people are at this level in terms of the workforce. And, a lot of that is because people cannot retire. They have not done the financial planning, or their financial planning that they did do was insufficient for their retirement purposes now. So they still keep working. And that's not true for everyone, but that's true for more people than it was in my parents' age or my grandparents' age. And so, and the young people are the early adopters of these changes. That this environment will keep changing. The pace of change is accelerating. It's not staying constant. It's going up. It's faster and faster. And Donald, you took me down memory lane, and Kimberly picked up on it. But my first program was in Fortran, so I was really amused to hear that. And we used to say, we had a running joke: you go find out what they want. I'll start coding. And this is like the idea is we don't always tackle the problem when we're starting to. We have a solution. Where's the problem? So we want to be applying our solutions to the real problems. And this identifying the problem is half the solution. It's accurately defining the problem is half the solution. So then it's just a little sweat and sometimes some tears and blood, but you will find the solution. Every problem we have, there's a solution trailing behind it if we stay open to the various different approaches. So we don't want the rigidity of thought, doing it the way we've done it in the past. We want to have a modern approach, because the modern age is changing so rapidly. We have to be open to the changes and provide the solutions to today's problems, tomorrow's problems, not yesterday's problems. So we can't get stuck in the past. And yeah, the Photoshop and Microsoft Word, man, and the manuals that came along with them were almost useless. But, in order to do the publishing that I was doing at the time, I had to use macros in Microsoft Word. And so then you find the resources, you teach yourself, don't wait for someone to teach you. Teach yourself. We all have the skill set, the resources are out there, go find them. And then teach yourself, because the new skill sets that you will need are not yet there, and they will be developed. And you will have to, if you're going to be a young adopter, you're going to have to learn, because there won't be a coach out there. There won't be a teacher out there. You're going to have to teach yourself. And, I think we're talking about different programming languages. People came up to me in the 90s and they said, people are telling me to go into COBOL, and I'm saying, no, man, COBOL is yesterday's programming language. You're going to go in there, and there are going to be fewer COBOL jobs and people with lots of COBOL programming experience, and you're applying for them. Teach yourself Java, teach yourself something new, something that is on the horizon. So this is what you have to think about. What's going to be needed? What's the job set that's going to be needed, not the job set that was needed yesterday? So these are the things that'll help you make decisions when you're young, when you're charting out your career. Plan ahead. And education doesn't stop in school, man. I said at one point, I got my master's degree, and I said, like Chief Joseph, I will go to school no more forever. But I've gone to continuous education classes every year. I always learn something new. And this has not stopped even in my grizzled advanced age. It's just something you have to do today. You have to keep teaching yourself. And there are people that, just sometimes it's just out of curiosity. Hey, someone's teaching about Dubliners. Well, I read Dubliners and I didn't like it. Well, let me take a course in it and see if I do like it. And I did. Holy cow, it was explained to me in a different way. So, be open. This is an important thing that we have to do. And the other thing that we haven't really talked about is the digital divide. There are people that have access to these devices, and they have access to electricity, and there are people who do not. So let's not forget about them. in our conversations about what's the digital world look like today and what are the digital jobs that are out there. There is a digital divide. There are haves and have-nots, and we cannot turn our backs and shut our eyes to those people who do not have access to these things that we take for granted. When I got started in AT&T, and these things, the mainframes that we were working on were monstrous humming devices that needed a tremendous amount of coolant, and they had fraction of the processing power and memory storage that my phone has, and we're just making leaps and bounds in terms of the technology that's out there, but not everybody has access to it. So let's keep that in mind when we have these discussions. And when you're talking about programming languages, man, just break it down. It's all about syntax. Like Donald was talking about, you have to put the semicolon here, followed by an open parens, and it's all syntax. The logic is the same. Understand the logic, and you will be able to pick up a new language very quickly, because it's all syntax, and it's not really. The logic is fundamentally the same. I need a record. Okay, fetch record. How do I say fetch record in this language? It's the same process. It's just different syntax. So these are the things you want to focus on. And Kimberly, I wanted to talk with you. Can you believe Kimberly knows about punch cards? I was working with punch cards. Look at me, and you believe me. Look at Kimberly, and yeah, no way. Come on, punch cards. But yeah, and you also talked about this is a precious resource. Well, this is a precious resource too. It's not just
you can't see me, but I do this a lot too, Jim. So yeah, and
yes. Yes. It's the hearts, because I often say, don't let don't let praise go to your head, and don't let criticism go to your heart, because you have to have confidence in yourself if you're going to make your way in this world. You have to have confidence. Acquire the skill set. Go out and get it, and then get something that's useful. People will hire you. People will pay you. And now I got a skill set. I could decide where I could live. You know how much power that gives a person? If I didn't want a job in Pittsburgh, there was one job in San Diego I could take. I ended up in San Francisco. But it was because I had a skill set that people needed. Now, you can live anywhere you want and still be productive. This is really important. And then Rob, thanks a lot. I just wanted to shout an amen after you ended up talking. But, one of the things I wanted to hit on is that, it's who controls the technology, because who controls the means of production is going to be an incredibly important facet in how our future develops. Is it a totalitarian regime that wants to make their workers work harder, more productive, and puts them in the same houses made of ticky-tacky that all look the same? Is this what we're going to be facing, or is this going to be the freedom that we all want? No, we don't know. We don't know how it's going to unfold. So keep aware. Who's telling us who has access? Who's telling us who can do these things? And when I talk about the means of production, I sound Marxist. No, I'm not a Marxist. I'm a post-capitalist. This is not the capitalist society made this mess, destroyed this planet, or is in the process of destroying it. So we got to think beyond capitalism. Don't just go out to acquire cars and yachts and houses and bigger houses and bigger houses. No, that's not going to help. Look out for other people. The digital divide. Care about the people that don't have access. They don't have an iPhone. And I run a philanthropic organization, and the thing I learned about philanthropy is that you have to say no. Most of your job is saying no. I wish someone had told me that before I got started. The last request was from Zambia, and I'm sending them chess-related equipment. And I'll talk a little bit about the kind of equipment that I'm sending now. But they also asked for a laptop. Well, yeah, they want a laptop. Of course they want a laptop, but I can't give them a laptop. I'm in 5 different African nations. I can't send laptops to. It's just I have to say no. It's hard. It's not fun. You want to say yes, but you can't say yes to everyone. So you've got to decide, what resources do I have and what resources can I share? And if I can share them, why wouldn't I? So these are the things. And now I'll talk about chess a little bit. When I got started, we used analog clocks. You press a button and it would start the opponent's clock. Now they're digital clocks. What's the difference? Well, analog clocks, you couldn't put in a time delay. Now you can. You couldn't put in a bonus. Now you can. So if you make a move, you can add 30 seconds to your clock. I didn't have that in 1972 when I played my first tournament game. No, that wasn't available. All sorts of things are changing. So when I send chess clocks to Zambia, I'm sending them digital clocks. No one knows about the analog clocks. And when I started, when the internet started out, I was coding in HTML. I produced the first website for a number of organizations. I was coding HTML. Who codes in HTML now? All these graphic user interface software programs are coming out, and they just type. How I had to tell it where to put the picture on the screen. Nobody worries about that now. So it's kind of keep changing. That's the bottom line. Keep changing, keep educating yourself, become an early adapter, get ahead of the curve, and you'll be employable and you'll be productive, and do it for the good of society, not for yourself. Selfish interest, rational self-interest is selfish. You want enlightened self-interest. Think about that when you make your decisions about what you want to do with your career. Thanks again, Sharif. Wonderful program. Great topic.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you. I want to go for the concluding remarks. Before that concluding remarks, I want to share something, because I always believe if you create a good example, it's an excellent example for the communities. I said that talent economy, I believe in talent people. I believe in the people, those who producing new dream for the new communities. So the speakers, those who join in World Talent Economy Forums, you are our real hero. And you are changing. I always said your approach, your discussion, your thought changing. I just give you a example of one of our hero from our backends, Mohammad Sohail Rana. Long time he is working, and we are actually helping him, guiding him in many ways. And today he actually supporting 500 families, those who are affected for the COVID-19 in Bangladesh. Mohammad Sohail Rana, from the beginning, he is also part of World Talent Economy Forum. And I believe hero creates hero. As you are the good example for the communities, you are inspiring more young communities, those who are trying to changing in the grassroots level, because I'm focusing on developing nations. This is Sohail Rana. Today they finish an excellent work. They support 500 people, families, actually 500 families with all of their initiative. And this is very good example. And I believe the more you contribute for World Talent Economy Forums, World Talent Economy Forum has excellent relationship with the grassroots level. These are the people, they need change. These are the people, they need support. These are the people, they need lot of innovations, because our technology, they are growing very fast. But still, I said that millions of people actually untouched. We cannot touch them. We cannot engage with the communities. We cannot engage with the real life people. So World Talent Economy Forum, we are producing more hero in the real life with your guideline, because all of your discussion, your guideline, your systematic approach, your analysis, very helpful for this developing nations youth communities, because they will be motivated. They get their belief that, okay, I can contribute for the society. I can do good things for the society. So Sohail Rana, thank you for your excellent contribution for the global community. Beside that, World Talent Economy Forum with Transhumanist Party, we are moving with this vaccine diplomacy, because there are a lot of shortage for vaccine in developing nations. So Transhumanist Party from USA, they are supporting us for even in the different developing nation, Malaysia, Pakistan, Bangladesh. We are actually trying to help them to get more vaccine, more vaccine for the developed nations. I know you have many brilliant people, many good people. So your support, we are not looking for money. We are looking for more knowledgeable people. We are looking for more good strategy. We are looking for more good technology. trust me, money is not a problem is in the developing nations. Only they need better institution. Only they need better strategy. So how Professor Rob, Professor David, Professor Donald, Professor Kim, Mr. James Eat contributing for World Talent Economy Forum, I'm sure in between 2 to 5 years, you can see it will be visualized how the developing nations can get the guidelines to develop better institution. So if they can develop better institution, they can help their community. They have resources, they have money, but they need to know how to utilize it, how to remove the like I want to say corruptions and other things. So by this way, I think we can develop more communities, and we can help more communities, and we can develop a better talent economy, and they will contribute for their economy. So thank you for all of your support. Next week we have our conference on smart cities, so hopefully your contribution will help us a lot. So I want to go for the concluding remarks. First Professor David, then Professor Rob, then Professor Kim, then Professor Donald, and finally Mr. James Eid. Professor David Smith.
Sharif, thank you so very, very much on this. This has been an amazing session. Donald traumatized me with LaTeX because I remember doing that, and I still have trauma left from that. And I now feel really old because my first programming was not in a language, but it was flipping switches on a PDP-6 computer. Mm-hmm. So it's made me feel really old. And Kim, I'm sure Kim doesn't know this, but I think I met her when she was at Northern Telecom.
David, yeah. Hi.
And I was on the board over MCMS.
MCNT, yep.
And they were interesting. They had the first supercomputer without a front end.
Yes.
And amazing technology there. And we took people from Research Triangle Park with others, and we formed a council consortia to try to pull the collaborative research together. And Kim, I was at MCC, Sematech, and a company called Technology Futures, where we ran the Telecommunications Technology Forum.
Okay.
Oh, and the concept of consortia back then is actually one which comes back and I think plays as we go through the future of digital work, our digital life, and what we're doing with that. In fact, while we're saying here, I just got the notification that the Department of Digital, Cultural, Media and Sports in the UK has just put in place today the legislation to oversee digital twins and digital identities, which is going to be one of the trends that we see going forward as we increase this movement towards digital work, digital education, as we start talking about smart communities and smart cities. And as we move these elements in place, we have to begin to do that. One of the places lagging in digital work is the human dimensions part of digital work. I happen to be an external advisor on a program at the University of Texas called the Human Dimensions of Organization. And the premise of their master's program is work today, and managing humans in work today is nothing like it was a decade ago, which is definitely nothing like it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So in our academic institutions, in our corporations with the training and executive development, we need to recognize that there is this human dimension of organizations that really plays with digital work, that really plays with digital education, that works across a smart community. And we have to spend more time with that. Donald and Rob both made comments earlier about the number of meetings during the workday. What part of that is we haven't taught ourselves how to manage in this digital age. Do we really need to have the meetings, or can we use digital tools to help us do part of that management? Can we use other type of tools? scares me almost to look at the bottom of my screen and see the number of other tools I have for managing short conversations to try to stay out of the long ones. And we're going to see that dramatically increase even with the digital work. But one of the things I'd like to conclude with, and James talked about it in his, but we've changed the way we look at our work, our education, and our leisure time. And I'm just going to share my screen one last time and see if I can go ahead and do this. This is how education used to be years ago. You went to school, took 20, 22 years, you worked, and then you retired. Those days are long gone. We shifted then to a cyclical life paradigm where we went to school, we worked, we took time off, we went back to school, worked, took time off, went back to school, worked, took time off, and did this through our life. And that really was there. But where we've moved today is we've moved to a blended lifestyle where we really begin to do leisure, work, and education all at the same time. And we're going to see more and more of that going forward. And part of this blended lifestyle is the way we go and do that education has changed. If I were to, when I'm asked by people I mentor and others, should I go back and do this? My answer today for the digital workforce is often go to a boot camp, take that course, go and take short courses here where you had 6 weeks to get through and get a certification on this area of JavaScript, on this area of other things. And we begin to see them changing very, very rapidly. And we're seeing the world change even to new technologies. Kim was around where ATM was a driver and it was an electronic driver. Today we're moving to an age where photons become the pathway to transmit data. Here in Austin, I have fiber running to the side of my house. And when I was at the hotel last week and I had to go step down from gigabit Ethernet, boy, I was in pain there for the first couple of meetings. and I still remember the noise of my analog modems trying to make the connections. So we've come a long, long ways. But the digital workforce is going to require us to do this to be competitive in the future. Sharif, you know, my company, part of our mandate for our economic transformation technologies is to serve whole nations. And we are developing, as you know, mesh networks for internet using TV band space to go where there's no internet at all today in countries, third world countries, particularly across the Caribbean and others. And it's important. Where they have none, 10 megabytes is the same speed as my gigabyte to them. So you see those needs. And there is a digital divide. There's a digital divide in every country. There's a digital divide in education. There's a divide in our skills for people who have not taken the opportunity to re-educate themselves. Mm-hmm. The biggest thing I tell parents today is you have to teach your children. We're in a time of lifelong education. And if your children do not get that, they're going to be left behind. We're in a time where the sources will dramatically change. We will go through multiple careers. As healthcare allows us to live longer, the number of careers are going to increase. And it's careers, not just job changes, not just promotions, it's career changes. And technology has enabled this. It's enabled it all the way around. So my final comment on the digital workplace is it's going to become tremendously more diverse. We're going to have kids who are 18 years old in the workforce, and we're going to have people in their 80s in the same workforce. And we have to work together. I think it was Kim who said earlier that oftentimes it's the younger people who are the innovators in technology. What's interesting to me is, particularly in places like around here in Austin, it's actually switching. I do some work in some of the schools as a volunteer mentor. And actually, it's the older people in Austin who are the early adopters. And the real Gen Z are slower adopters today. And we're seeing that as well, too. So it's a dynamic world. And it's one where all these systems, which are built upon other systems, are coming to play. And we have to understand the future of a digital workplace, not as one element, but how do we use all these systems of systems to do the work and to be able to work through those. And that's dramatically where this future is going. And you're doing such a good job helping prepare your region to understand the complexities of this and to understand that it takes input from all the different stakeholders, the education, the public sector, the private sector, to get this done. And I applaud you for that, Sharif.
Thank you, Sharif.
Thank you,
David,
sir. Thank
well
you, sir.
said.
Yes, thank you, sir. I also believe that if we want, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, Professor Rob. Yes, Professor Rob.
Okay, nice head fake there for me. I thought you were going to say something a little bit further. By the way, it's kind of interesting. While you guys are over doing telecom, I was over at Rome Systems, also doing telecom, competitive analysis and internal audit while I was there. Funny story. My team in competitive analysis, we would go to the Northern Telecom events, and the Northern Telecom folks would come to our events, and it was all copacetic and nobody really cared until one day we went in and they were asking for business cards for a raffle at a customer event. And of course, we submitted our business cards, and then my team won every friggin' prize. And from then on, we weren't invited to Northern Telecom events.
That's how Motel works.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. The other story I had with Northern Telecom is one of my competitive analysis reports got leaked to our biggest customer, and competitive analysis reports can be pretty negative. And my report kind of said our product sucked, and the large customer, which was Kaiser Hospitals, decided they weren't going to buy from us anymore because of my report. And the head of sales for Rome Systems wanted to fire me. A guy's last name was Watson. We're actually related to Thomas Watson, the founder of IBM, wanted to fire me. But what he didn't realize is I actually ran security for marketing as well. It reported it up to me, and we were able to find out that it was the report that I'd given him that got leaked to Northern Telecom. He left before I did. So back to my closing remarks. As we look at the movement to the digital workplace, the thing that's often being lost is the human aspect of work, the work-life balance aspect. We can become covered with completely covered by digital technology, the social media stuff, the conversations, the Zoom meetings. These things can kind of fill up your life, and if you're not really careful, you can work yourself to death. And so as you're beginning your careers, figuring out exactly what your thresholds are, how much time you put into this, and understanding focus and removing distractions are important. You don't need to be on social media all day long. You don't need to be in every friggin' Zoom meeting that's out there. What is important is getting your core accomplishments done and making sure that your manager and you are in agreement in terms of what they are. It's the funny thing is in IBM, which is fairly highly regulated, in terms of processes, is where that really broke down for me, because I started off in Rome Systems, but then I migrated to IBM, and I went from being one of the top performers to having some performance problems. But it was largely because I didn't get my from the manager I got in IBM. I didn't get my goals until the day before my review, and so invariably I found out what I was supposed to do just before I was supposed to be measured on it, and I took exception to that. So invariably that became a headache. So as you're going through your interviewing process and you're going into your career, start asking questions about how are the employees treated? What are the protections put in place against abusive managers? What's the story with regard to misogyny? With regard to the treatment, particularly of minorities and women, the tech industry has a really bad history here. Books to read about this are Brutopia and Technically Wrong. Both cover the subject matter at length from different angles. But as you begin your careers in different companies, rather than just focusing on benefits and salary, focus a bit on employee treatment. I got recruited a few years back to go for a research company, and the recruiter called up and pitched me on how much money I was going to make and how much power and what my title would be. By the way, in research companies, the titles mean squat. Rather than giving you raises, they give you a title. So you can be a senior VP at a research company, and you have nobody reporting to you. It's just garbage. And you're certainly not a C-level executive. The title is meaningless. So the titles don't mean anything. And salary is important, but it doesn't do you any good if you're going to work yourself to death. The number of people that I've watched literally die in the job, is fairly significant, and just from overstress. The other thing to think about is that a lot of people live and plan for retirement, and what I've also observed is a lot of people don't do well in retirement. Once the job is removed, they don't know what to do with themselves, and particularly with regard to CEOs, they tend to go into rapid decline, and largely because they're no longer engaged. They don't know what to do. My grandfather was a CEO, and I watched him go from being one of those powerful people in the state of California to being kind of a pathetic individual who was just struggling for recognition because he didn't know what to do when he was no longer running a company. And so spend at least some time figuring out, if you want to retire, what it is you're going to do in retirement, and build for that, because you can have a long, happy life after work, but only if you think through what that's going to be. You suddenly remove everything that's kept you motivated for most of your life, and you're not going to be happy. People go through maybe a month and a half of, okay, let's travel, let's do a bunch of other stuff, and then they get bored. They start trying to get their jobs back. My father-in-law spent most of his retirement trying to get somebody else to hire him so he could have another job. That's not where you want to be. If you can find a job where you can continue on, I've been lucky as an analyst to be able to continue on as long as I want, or figure out your second career, what it is you really want to do once you're done. But these are all important things we don't spend enough time talking about. So net, as we move to a new digital workplace, don't forget the human aspects. Don't forget the interaction with people. Don't forget treatment, and don't forget to kind of prioritize managers, companies, and environments that treat people well, as opposed to those that chew them up and spit them out. You'll be happier, your family will be happier, and when you finally get to retirement, you may actually be able to enjoy it, or make the choice that you don't retire. It's a choice.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well said. I want to add something. Don't think because it's a big corporation, it's a good company to work for. And unfortunately, I come from the age and time where companies used to care for you, like IBM and Nortel back in the day. They were very pro-employee, but I watched IBM turn into a horrible place to work for. Very sad. I also saw where they became management top heavy, and I would see one engineer working for 5 managers. I never understood that. We got 5 project managers here. We all got our project management certification, and one engineer. They would lay off all the engineers and keep all the PMs. So I would be very, very cautious and careful. I would never promote working for IBM. They couldn't hire me unless they hired me to come in and clean them up and straighten them out. And like you said, treat people humanly. That doesn't exist anymore. And I think that's why the quality of products and services have declined greatly, because people need to have a lot of this, like Jim keeps talking, it's mentioned, as well as this, to produce these great quality products. Nortel, again, was not one of my favorite places to work for. I learned a lot from them. I got to watch, them take people into the digital age. Fujitsu was probably my favorite company of all. It was a Japanese-owned company. I was the first female engineer they hired here in the United States. Again, you mentioned the minorities of women in the tech industry. It still exists. I attended a telecom forum meeting years after I kind of started my own company. They invited me to a World Standards Committee meeting, and I got there a little late. And when I arrived, the person walked me up to the front of the room. I wasn't paying attention to the whole room. And I sat down, and the speaker kept saying, lady and gentleman, lady. And I'm like, maybe he's from another country. And I looked in the room, and I was the only woman in the room. After all of those years that I put into telecom, I figured there'd be more women that were treated with enough respect to invite to these meetings. And I don't know if it's that they're not invited, or they feel intimidated, or maybe they just feel like they don't have enough time because they have to apply themselves so much into their work. But to still, in this day and time, be the only female in a World Standards Committee meeting was kind of disappointing to me. So I think we just need to learn to open the door more to people working rather than gender or age. And oh, by the way, there are a couple 8-year-olds out there running companies right now. Okay. 8-year-olds, $1 million companies, and 2 18-year-olds I don't know when they started the game company, but they've started their own TV show. It will probably become a TV network. Every kid in the world screams and jumps up and down when they see these 2 18-year-olds, like insane. So we're in an age where it doesn't matter how old you are, that you can work, you can generate money. And that's our truest competition right there. I don't think retirement exists. And I think it's not healthy. I think the word retirement kind of staggers even our own internal health. And I think we just need to rethink and replan workload. I think you kept saying it, Rob, our workload. And David, you mentioned this too. So I think, and I think even Jim said, I think all of y'all said it, too much workload. I think we need to balance that. And then as you get older, readjust it to something that you enjoy more. And hopefully we've taken the financial literacy courses we need to do that. That doesn't exist in schools. So I strongly advise people to go out and take as many financial literacy training sessions as you can. This is very important. Very important. Sharif, this is a conversation. I haven't had this much fun in a long time.
Okay. Thank you. Professor Donald, what's your concluding remarks?
I always feel very stimulated and have great thoughts they're great to me anyway, thoughts by talking to all of you every week. I just can't not mention that my first programming class was on cars. It was an IBM 360. And I'll tell you, I never would have gone into software if I had to do that. I'm just not that anal. And but our university converted to Unix in, I guess, 1978. And I was a linguistics major, but the school had an open access policy where everyone who wanted could use the computer system. The whole entire school used a PDP 1145 when it began, which just for just contrast, had a 60 megabyte disk drive and half a megabyte of memory, and it was a really powerful mini computer at the time. But there was 2 books on Unix. There was the C programming language by Kernahan and Ritchie, and there was the Unix Programmer's Manual, and that's all I had. But fortunately, since I had a 300 baud modem, got to work at home, the manual took so long to get on my screen when I read a manual page that I wound up memorizing the whole manual after a few years. And there's nothing better to do than read it as it dribbled on my screen. But I got far enough that it's another amusing thing that Kim said is I've taught Unix internals at Bell Labs, Motorola, HP, all these companies all over the world. And if I wanted to do anything with Unix, I'd have to take a certification course. It was like when I was in telecom, I wrote a device driver for GTE that transferred billing records from the switches to the main central billing thing. I had to take an English literacy course when I got my master's degree in Finland. It was an absolute requirement. I had to take it. That was pretty funny. Anyway, I really want to echo what everyone's been saying about the social layer, because you know that's kind of my thing. And I loved what who mentioned it? Somebody mentioned the thing about the normative or the aspects of AI, and I've been talking about that on the show, which is that basically the data that we use to train it becomes the baseline, and a lot of times they use data from maybe just Americans or just English speakers, or at Amazon it turned out they were using to decide what resumes were best. They were using Amazon engineers, which were all white men, and so because of that, their program automatically rejected people of color and women. And so these AI has many upsides, but it's actually not. I mean, I wish they'd take the word intelligence out of it. Maybe call it AS, advanced statistics, or advanced statistical modeling, or something like that, because that's really what it is. And I really agree with the continuing learning. I have a Japanese student who we've decided that what we're doing is we're reading a book a week. And so every week I read at least one book, and usually I have different interests than he does, so I'll wind up reading another book as well. So it's kind of fun because it gets me on shows like this. I actually know something. So one of the books I just read was called Ugly Truth, which is about Facebook. And internally, Facebook has had some real issues. It's had its data stolen and then used to get Trump in office through Cambridge Analytics. And they are absolutely unwilling and incapable of stopping this fire hose of garbage that's coming out of it right now, including vaccine, anti-vaccine stuff. They've got these rooms. So the reason I'm saying that is because when you're looking at the digital world, you need to find ways of learning to recognize basically bullshit from stuff that's actually good. But I just want to mention that in the course of learning, and both Kim and I taught ourselves. And you can teach yourself, you can teach yourself almost anything. Like I've been an instructor forever. And I always tell my students right at the beginning, as I say, I can't pour knowledge into your head. It's not like I'm a radio tower and you're radios and I talk and suddenly you can record it on the other end. In the end, you have to do the work. You're teaching yourself. As a teacher, all I can do is basically guide you to think things I know that you could do that'll help you learn it faster. But you're always teach yourself. There's no other thing. But I also want to mention about the work-life balance, because I mentioned right at the beginning of the show that people are becoming less productive and they're spending more time when they're working at home. And that is bad for work-life balance. But the thing I think is really fascinating is that right now, the majority of people in the United States do not work for a company. They work, but they work as freelance. And that's not such a bad thing, because when I was at HP for 6 years, and the whole time I was an independent consultant. And they offered to hire me, but I was making so much more money than the employees that I said, no way. And then Carly Rana took it over, and it went from one of the best companies in Silicon Valley to one of the worst companies to work for in Silicon Valley. So you can, whatever you do, as Kim and others have said, the company isn't what you are. I mean, the company's not necessarily going to take care of you. But where I want to finish up with saying that what does it mean to be an independent contractor? If the world is going to freelance, that's an issue on both a personal and a social level. On the social level, it's hard to have unions. And in the United States, unions are what caused the 40-hour work week, to have all kinds of rules about how you could treat employees, to end child labor. There was just an incredible amount of things that happened because people got together in groups, and they basically used the fact that, they were selling their labor and saying, okay, we're going to withhold it. And because of that, we managed to revamp the system. Right now, the freelance is wonderful. Like, as I said, it could be great. But remember, when you're a freelance person, you're a business. And you have to do your own marketing, you have to do your own finances, you have to do everything. And so I'm really echoing what Kim says, that you need to learn financial management. That's one of the most important things when you're freelance. And then marketing allows you to know what other people are getting paid for what you're doing, so that when you sell your services, you can get fair wages. And it also allows you to look at different markets. So if you're doing career changes, like Rob says, if you're trying to make more money, then you can aim for things that could make you more money. If you're would rather have good work-life balance, that you can aim for that. And in every case, you're a business, and you need to learn all the things that businesses need to learn. And so that's basically all I want to say. And it's always nice to be here, and I'll see you probably tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. James. Mr. Jimmy, yes.
I can't hear him.
You're muted.
Jim.
Big mistake, rookie mistake, and I'm not a rookie. I just was thanking Sharif for assembling this talent and having this conversation about this topic. And I held up my notes, because I always take notes when I'm on your show, because I'm always learning something. I just wanted to throw that out to you, Sharif. You're doing a tremendous job of assembling people talking about very important topics. And I learned from the people that you assembled. So tip of the hat to Sharif.
Thank you.
But the first thing I want to say is, one of the things that we tend to do is build walls to keep if we have something, we want to keep people out of it. And one of the most discouraging moments of my life was when our president said, build a wall. And one of the proudest moments was when one of the presidents of our country in the United States said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall. And this is what we need to do, start tearing down walls and building bridges instead, because we're in this together. None of us are going to solve this by ourselves. And America first is America alone. And you don't want to do this alone because we're in it together. We're going to rise or fall together. So we have to have this idea, this post-capitalist idea. Competition is good, man. You're looking at one of the most competitive guys. You know, you don't become a chess master if you're not competitive. And you know, I had a beautiful looking woman tell me one day she can get me to do anything she wanted. And I went, what? What are you talking about? And she said, all I have to do is say you can't do it. And oh man, she saw through me right away. Because, you know, just tell me I can't do it. I'll do it to show you. And so I'm very competitive. I'm pro competition, but it's also cooperation. I've learned that a team is better than any individual. And how do you get teams assembled? Maybe I'm not a good accountant, so I need an accountant on my team. Maybe I'm not a lawyer. Maybe I need a lawyer on my team. Maybe I'm a leader, so I got to assemble these people. Maybe that's my skill set. Maybe it isn't. Maybe I have another skill set. So whatever skill set you get, whatever you are good at, whatever you're passionate about, follow your passion, get that skill set, and then find where you can utilize it that's good for the society that you live in, the community that you live in. And I say, don't ask, what can the planet do for me? Ask, what can I do for the planet? So, because we got to start thinking about this as one species on one planet. We call it Earth. We're all in this together because the climate change is a global phenomenon. This pandemic that's sweeping across the globe, it's not just affecting us. It's not just affecting our country. It's not just affecting our town, our state. It's affecting everybody. So we got to start thinking like that. We're all in this together. And when we do, we'll start making better decisions. We'll stop polluting the planet, destroying the sources of our agriculture. You know, we have almond growers in California that are not growing almonds now. They're selling their water rights instead. You know, this is the crazy world that we live in, you know, where water is this precious commodity. And, you know, we're not thinking about what there's jobs in water purification. Maybe they'll be valuable. Maybe that's the skill set that I need to acquire. Something that makes that toxic water drinkable, because water is life. These are the things that I wanted to close with. But also, I wanted to double down on what Rob was saying. You know, we got to manage the managers too. How are we going to do this? Because we don't have management now prepared to to lead the groups that are doing the work. You know, they're doing it the old-fashioned way, which no longer applies to our society. So how do we manage the managers? Well, we teach them differently. And holy cow, let's extrapolate on that for a moment. We got to teach everybody differently. We've got a 19th century agrarian-based education system. What about that? Sharif, I'd love you to have a show about that and get these brilliant people to talk about that. You know, how are we going to change education? Because what we're doing now doesn't make sense. What we're teaching them now is not the skill sets that they need. Not, you know, what about working in small groups? You know, because that's what's going to happen. And how do we do this? You know, David mentioned the idea of short. You know, you don't want to be in long conversations. The short, well, I used to call that memo mode thinking, because one of the downsides of that is people are so busy. I've got a meeting to go to. I've got a meeting to go to. I've got 5 messages I've got to reply to on my email. I've got 4 phone calls that I've got to respond to, and I don't have any time. And so I can dash off a memo. That's all I have time for. And that's not my best thinking. So, you know, we need time for reflection as well. And we have to build that into our day. We have to build that into our work life. Time for reflection. Because otherwise you're just getting the surface of the best thinking of my 1 second attention span. And that's why I'm against video games as a chess player. Of course I am. But video games, you know, they're teaching you to have a hyperactive nervous system. They're not teaching you to reflect, to contemplate, to think. So this is not the kinds of education that we want to give our children, to teach them into the productive citizens that we're going to need in the future. So these are the things I want to talk about as I conclude. And I think from that, the last thing I want to say is manage your own life. Manage yourself first. And then those in your sphere of influence. And by managing your own life, Now I'm going to say something that I'd have to be honest about this. I'm going to say, you can say no to Zoom meetings. You don't have to go to all of them. And I've got 4 more scheduled today that I'm going to go to. So don't do what I say. Don't do what I do. Do what I say. Don't say no sometimes. You don't have to be on all these calls, and it's hard for me to say no. So I say yes. And then I get worn out. And I'm no good for myself. I'm no good to anybody else when I'm exhausted. So manage yourself. Manage how you eat. Eat well. Exercise. Sleep well. And then take charge of your own education, because our education system is failing you. Take charge of yourself. Manage yourself before you try to have the chutzpah to manage others. Thanks again, Sharif. Wonderful show. Tear down the wall.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining today's session. So World Talent Economy Forums, I believe that step by step we are growing. We are actually want to bring the best people from around the world. Professor Kimberly, perhaps you have the best television channel in your hand. Professor Rob, you are the best analyst around the world. Even yesterday I get call from India. They love your analysis. Professor David, you have excellent strategic point of view, which will be very helpful for developing nations. Professor Donalds, how you give different kind of critical analysis, which will be helpful for our youth communities. Jim, you have excellent like foundations, and your foundation doing a lot of work. So we are actually creating more heroes. We are creating a good ecosystem where the best of the best resources we want to accumulate. We want to bring all of the talents together. You will inspire and they will do their job. And by this way, we can minimize the gap in between developed nations and developing nations. And this is the way I believe that we can change millions of lives. It's not only Asia Pacific. Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, Taiwan, China, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, African, 57 nations, they are engaging with World Talent Economy Forum, especially developing nations. But we need knowledge. We need technology from developed nations, from people like you, those who work inside the big ecosystem. Your knowledge, your experience is priceless for us. I always said we do not need money. We need proper knowledge. We need proper experience. By this way, I'm sure in the COVID situation, we can overcome from this situation. And I want to give thanks the people, those who supporting our initiative with vaccine, with internet, with laptop, whatever it is you are supporting with your knowledge, which is priceless. And hopefully we can develop a millions of people's ecosystem, and those who change next 10 to 15 years of this world. And that is the way I think we can survive, and we can work together, and we can overcome from this pandemic situation. Thank you, Professor Kim, for joining World Talent Economy Forum discussion. Thank you, Professor Donalds, Professor David, Professor Rob, for your excellent analysis, Mr. James Ed, for your contribution. Bye-bye and take care.